heart of Silicon Valley, California. We're talking innovation startups, the future, not necessarily those, and not necessarily in that order. That's right, folks. We're not going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about AI again because that's what everyone seems to care about. If you don't care about AI, if you want me to talk about something other than AI, then just let me know in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, smack that subscribe button and hit that bell so you'll be notified when a new show comes online. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast service, please subscribe and please drop a note on Apple Podcasts. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Now, I think it's very sad, very, very sad when we have amazing new technologies that are invented to create new things. Brand new things. Like, for example, ChatGPT and large language models. We've been able to invent these amazing technological breakthroughs that sound like human beings. They talk like human beings. They act like human beings. They can create content like human beings. They're amazing. And whenever we do something like this, it happens all the time. Every time we do something where we push the boundaries of technology to create something completely brand new without guardrails. Think about the beginnings of the internet. Think about the beginnings of Usenet. Think about the free speech on Usenet. Think about the free speech on the original blogs. Think about free speech on Yahoo and Google and the original search engines, Alta Vista, etc. Think about when podcasts first came out. Think about when YouTube first came out. Think about when all these new technologies, these new content creation technologies come about. All of these great new content creation technologies have this initial rush of users. And during this initial rush of users, we can hear almost anybody talk about anything, even if it's not sort of socially agreeable. We have unlimited free speech in this little tiny window, and the window is actually used to be huge. It used to be huge because the censors or the controllers that would come in, they would come in at a later stage because usually the content that was created was so compelling and new and different and interesting that people wanted it to stay that way. So they tried to keep it like that as much as humanly possible until someone came in and said, should we really be talking about this because it's something that the general populace doesn't agree with or a political party doesn't agree with. So this medium, instead of being wide open to innovation, instead of being wide open to free speech, instead of being wide open to brand new ideas which shake up the status quo, lid is put on it. It's restricted, it's constricted, it's censored. It's put in a box, and only the stuff that's allowed to be spoken of in the box, it happens to occur. That's the only content you get. The content that's allowed is the only content that's allowed. It's happened to blogs. It's happened to websites. It's happened to podcasts. It's happened to YouTube and videos. It's happened to every one of these content creation mediums. And in every case, it's happened sooner and sooner. So there's been windows when you could get actual free speech, amazing innovation, out-of-the-box thinking in each and every medium as it has grown or born and evolved. You used to be able to get that. There was that window of opportunity where it was a free-for-all. Some people called it the Wild West. Anybody could talk about anything. And true innovation occurred in that time space, in that slot. There was tons of discussion and back and forth and maybe hatred and love and all sorts of emotions were bouncing back and forth, but at least we were talking freely. We could say what we wanted to say without boundaries. And when you say what you want to say without boundaries, then that's where the true innovation occurs. When you can disrupt what's currently out there. even if you're just talking about disrupting it. I'm not saying you're going to go do it. I'm going to say you're talking about it. So let's say, for example, you were talking about coming up with a brand new service that was against the law. In some places, it's against the law. It's against the law, for example, in some places, for Uber to exist. Because the only people who are allowed to run taxis or that kind of transportation services are the taxi folks. And then Uber comes into New York and says, you know what, we're going to set up shop. And the reason why they were able to set up shop is because they weren't really causing, even though the outcome was a taxi service, they were really a marketplace. They were a marketplace for drivers and people who wanted to be driven, to be matched up. But in the end, they competed with the cabs. So whenever these new services come out, sometimes I call it permissionless innovation, where somebody goes ahead and innovates and puts something in, whether it's illegal or not talked about or something that's a little bit untoward or makes you feel a little uncomfortable. This is innovation. But what ends up happening is that over time, the innovation is squelched. The speech is pushed down. You're not allowed to say these things. And when it comes to things like websites, we're in a situation now where you can never, like nobody will just come to your website unless they know about your website or they find you through Google. So Google has become, 96% uptake. Google has become the front page of the internet. So if I want to find anything, I have to be findable on Google. But if the gods of Google have decided that you're not going to be findable because of your unpopular opinion, then you're not going to be foundable. And the problem is that unpopular opinion could be an amazing innovation that we could get to somebody. Now you're probably saying to yourself, you've heard all this before. I've talked about this before, yes, but for some reason nowadays, in this day and age, this is accelerating. So when a new technology comes out, the pressure to censor it and make sure it only speaks new speak is immense. And it happens so quickly with AI. It's ridiculous how quickly it happened with AI. In fact, it's almost impossible now to go into AI and get it to think outside the box in some way. But you can do it. You can still do it. You can still play around with it and think outside the box in some way. And I just read this week on AIdaily.us, my new newsletter, that China has decided to finally finalize their rules when it comes to AI. And lo and behold, instead of allowing it to be innovative, allowing it to create new things, it is just as censored as all other media. Your bot has to be a good socialist, otherwise it's not going to exist. So the party line, the CCP party line, is going to have to be built right into the AI, just like the Liberal Democrat party line is baked into ChatGPT. There's no AIs that are currently available out there that don't have that baked in. And that's where Elon Musk's new service system comes from. Now, he's calling it XAI. It was launched this week, or launched last week. And he teased this before as something like called Truth AI, where he would create an AI using large language models like everybody else, but it wouldn't be censored and restricted like all of the other types of AI that are out there. If you come up with a non-censored, non-restricted AI, maybe it would actually be able to solve our problems. Because if you think about it, when you start doing these things to these AIs, you're putting blinders on them. It's like telling people to go into a room and ideate, but you can only ideate in this tiny little square. Don't think outside the box. You can't innovate inside the box. You have to innovate outside the box. And if we're already telling our AIs they can only be in this box, if China's telling their AIs they can only be in the socialist box, if we're telling our AIs they can only be in the woke box, then who knows what we're missing? What are we cutting ourselves out of? What solutions could we possibly be missing out on because we're already telling our AIs, don't go there? If you ask me, that's not innovation. Innovation is when you go there, when you do things that are uncomfortable, that are dangerous, that are different, that are on the edge, that are outside of the box, that maybe make people feel uneasy. Yes, could be even illegal in some places. See what I'm saying? So many businesses, so much innovation was created when somebody didn't follow the status quo. If all of our tools, if everything that we create has to follow the status quo, how can we innovate if we can't go beyond the status quo? Innovation occurs beyond the status quo. And if we can't go beyond the status quo, if we're forced to stay in the box, then what happens to innovation? How could we possibly innovate if we're forced to stay in the box? That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.